Hey guys, it is Tim with Tabletop Terrors, and this is a Copper Jackals character creation and sort of session 0 for a Brigade Con game that's coming up. I will explain a little more what a Copper Jackal is in a moment, and I'll explain a little more what Brigade Con is. But first, I want to introduce you to the players that are going to be in the game. I'm very glad to have all these players. They're awesome game masters, and they're fantastic players as well. So I will go ahead and I will start on my left with Drake of the RPG Construct.
Hey guys, I'm Drake with the RPG Construct. Just kind of run that channel right now, trying to get some content. We do have a campaign going in the Dragongrin setting right now. We are on session 3, I believe, coming up next week or the week after. Definitely really excited to be part of this with everybody.
Next, let's go to Drop Dice.
Hey guys, I'm Chris. I'm with the channel Drop Dice, and I'm also excited about this. I've been kind of following along and helping out with Copper Jackals pretty much since the start. So for me, getting to play like a full Copper Jackal game with the creator is really fun, and I look forward to it.
All right, Jake.
Hey internets, it's Jake, and this is Mini Terrain Domain. Well, this isn't. This is Tabletop Terrors, but I'm Mini Terrain Domain. You may know me from running D&D one-shots. I've run a couple Copper Jackal incursions. I love the Dragongrin setting and the Copper Jackals, and if I'm not mistaken, I think this will actually be my first time playing a Copper Jackal, even though I've run quite a few of the one-shots. So I'm really excited to be in this game with this group of people and this DM.
And finally, Marquise.
What's up, everybody? I'm the bold, the beautiful, theatrical Strider. You can also call me Marquise. I'm happy to be here. I've been helping Tim a lot with the play testing and giving him my opinions on things and reviewing this, that, and the other. It's my first game with Tim where it's more than just a small play test, so I'll be looking forward to it when it finally does happen. And other than that, happy to be here.
And that's actually something else to mention. So I'm going to go over a little bit of what the Copper Jackals are and kind of what we're doing. But the first thing I want to say is thank you to all of you players, because all of these guys have contributed pretty heavily in the playtest. James and I and Matt and Barker of Absolute Tabletop, we come up with some wild ideas, but these guys they're very skilled players, especially at 5th edition. So aside from being excellent role players, they have a very good mind for mechanics. And so, I'll be like, hey, this is a really cool idea. I think this is neat. And one of these guys will say, yeah, but you're forgetting about the monk's ability to do X. And I'll go, oh, you're right. I am forgetting about that. And that would be game breaking. So I'm excited to play because you guys are the ones who helped create the Copper Jackals. It was something that you played a big part in foundationally. So I wanted to say that first. I think my daughter's trying to join the stream right now. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you kind of a brief primer. What is a Copper Jackal? Well, Absolute Tabletop is the printing company that we're part of, the publisher. And I want to let you guys know kind of a brief primer, because we're going to be talking about the Copper Jackals a lot. And if this is your first time on the channel, we've got a lot of new subscribers. Just understand that the Copper Jackals are an unsanctioned paramilitary organization that operate primarily in our campaign world of Dragongrin, okay? Dragongrin is a place where evil has won. So it's even more important that these pillars of heroism exist. These Copper Jackals are some of the few heroes that are powerful enough to try to stem the tide of darkness that is constantly creeping across the lands. They're bound under this sacred oath called the Copper Vow. And so that means that they swear to operate justly without compromise. Okay, so you'll hear us say something called Sundara Compress. This is the Copper Jackal sort of credo, and this means without compromise. So this was something that binds these jackals together to remain as good as possible in this morally gray world. So that is a basic primer. You will see us play these characters on October 29th at 8 p.m. Eastern on BrigadeCon.org and also on this channel. We are going to be running this game as part of BrigadeCon, which is an online convention. All the proceeds for BrigadeCon go directly toward the charity Child's Play, which helps children who are stuck in hospitals. So that's kind of the rundown. That's kind of the primer. What I want to do now is I'll kind of do the same thing. We'll kind of work back and forth like a Z, where I'll work from left to right, right to left. And just, I'm going to make this a hybrid, because one of the opportunities we have is to sort of make this a session 0 as well. I want to know what kind of Copper Jackals game all of you want run, because I have some ideas in my mind and I have a general idea, this kind of plot that is happening, but I want to hear from you. And so I'll start, Marquise, I'll start with you. Consider this sort of a session 0, even though it's for a one-shot. What style of Copper Jackals game do you want to be playing right now?
So the most important thing that I'm thinking about that I specifically want is that, in addition to all the violence and the action and the mayhem and everything, I want a significant amount of time for our Copper Jackals to actually be able to interact with each other. I want to have a bunch of back and forth with each other. I want to feel like we're building like that expendable style, basic, comradeship and everything. That's what I'm really looking for.
All right, perfect. So that kinship, and you want to make sure there's enough time for you guys to actually have some sort of bond, not just, all right, here's what I do, here's what you do. Okay, game over. It was fun using all our abilities, guys. So I like that a lot. Jake, what about you? What are you hoping to get out of this game?
Yeah, so I'd say first, echoing Marquise, the opportunity at the level that we're going to be playing at. We've been doing this for a while. We've been Jackals for a while. We're pros, and we've been working together for a while. So we should have some of that that chemistry there. But I'm also looking for high energy, high octane explosions. Just we're constantly. I'm picturing like action movie with dialogue and witty banter in between punches, kicks, and weapons clashing. But knowing this group and not knowing what we're going up against, some serious situations too. The heroes that with each other, but they know when to buckle down, because it's the real thing. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I mean, you take your big box office hits and kind of roll them all, just put them into a big bag, shake them up, and dump it out, and pick out the third act. That's kind of what I envision.
Perfect. No, and that's so. Name me 2 box office hits that you are thinking. And you can have a minute if you want a minute to kind of think about it.
No. I think one of my favorites, and I get picked on all the time by people. I don't know why. Sucker Punch. I love the action sequences in Sucker Punch.
Okay.
It's just they get right into those sequences. Just boom. Here's like a 2-second setup, and they're in the heat of it. And sometimes ridiculous mixture of fantasy and machine guns and all that kind of stuff. And then, the big Marvel movies that we've had for the last decade. There's a reason they're so successful. And you got those big ensemble casts with the Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that. So that's what I'm thinking.
That's perfect. Awesome.
Sucker Punch Avengers.
I love it, dude. As a game master, that's something that I was wanting to be really careful of with this, is because I've had a lot of time to think about this game. And in my mind, it's developed a certain way. And I thought, you know what? We need to make this a little bit of a session 0 as well, because if I can take what I want to do and meld it with what all of you want to do, everyone's going to be happier. So I think it's perfect. What about you, Chris? What are you hoping to get out of this game? What style are you looking for?
Yeah, so I actually really like the idea of talking about touchstones. So like the movie idea. I kind of like stuff like I would love to see something more like the new Mad Max, where just there's like combat and stuff like that, but there's combat with purpose. It's big. It's got like a whole lot of presence in there. And Mad Max, I think, is kind of a cool one just because inside that one, he's facing like this overbearing evil, and he's just like one guy standing up to it. And then he kind of builds his team, and there's that camaraderie like what he was talking about. And I think that that's kind of a good one. And then for movie 2, I'd probably say something like Indiana Jones, actually, like Raiders, where there's some cool, like maybe a trap scene or a methodical thought thing that's going to do more than just, hey, we're super cool guys that can take down an army together kind of thing. And then aside from the touchstones, what I'd really like to see is the character I have in mind is kind of a blighter. So I'd like to see an environment that I can use that to my advantage since I'm playing a druid. Like maybe like an outdoor combat, not just like a middle of a dungeon. That way I can get to use some of the cooler, like higher level druid stuff, like Call Lightning or something like that.
Awesome. And this is key stuff. If you're watching this and you're wondering kind of what my method is here and what I'm trying to do, it's that simple thing that Chris just mentioned. He's like, hey, I want to play this druid. I'm a blighter and I want to have this opportunity. I can now take that and put a twist on it, turn it on its ear, or surprise him in a way that makes it like, oh, wow, this is probably kind of for me to do this, because this is a one shot. This is going to be a lot like an action movie. It's, I want there to be a singleness of effect. I want it to be from beginning to end, this sort of complete story, but it shouldn't just be my story. It should be all of their stories as well. And this is a way to make sure that it's a good recipe that kind of makes everyone happy. So I think that's great, Chris, and I will definitely make sure to add some of that in there. What about you, Drake, my man?
Well, I mean, everything these guys said is absolutely accurate. I agree with all of them, with everything that they said. The only thing that I would add to it, you got, like you said before, you got some pretty creative people here. And the ability to use all the not so much all the copper boons and stuff like that, because there was a lot, but to really be able to incorporate the skills that we have as Copper Jackals, to really let us fight something big, something that, I mean, everybody's going to have something that they can just do an obscene amount of damage with. I don't want to hit something 3 times and it's dead. Especially with like the epic encounters. I want to have to think about it. I want to have to plan something, kind of strategize with the players on the fly. You know what I mean? Like I said, all this other stuff is absolutely, I agree with them. But I think that, being able to play off of each other, like personally, every game I play with Marquise here, I always get into some type of banter with him for some reason, and it's a lot of fun. And I really enjoy that, but being able to utilize the skills of those players, almost adding on top of those boons and working together for something. It's like a combo attack type of stuff. That's really the only thing that I would add, just something big. I want to do something epic with these guys.
Cool. Very cool. And I think for me, Chris talking about touchstones, I think one of the things I'm really going to try to focus on is making sure that there is a lot of zooming in and zooming out. So those big expansive scenes, I think probably Mad Max is the example I'll use. When you see probably what I think would be the closest thing I've ever seen to what I imagine a bleak storm like is the scene in the desert where they're basically going through that sandstorm. And just this wide angle of all these cars roving across the desert. But then you're tight in on a semi-truck and there's people fighting and it's very visceral and it's very close and physical. And so I think I'm going to try to really make sure there's a lot of that to nail some of the things that were said before. The only way to have that cool, intimate, like Bond stuff are those zoomed in moments. And then zoom out, big threat, crazy stuff, and then zoom in. And so I'm really going to try to do that. Awesome. So let's make some Copper Jackals. Like I said, this is going to be kind of laid back. So thank you everyone who's watching. Feel free to ask questions in the chat. I'm going to be checking it pretty frequently here. But I think, I can walk everyone through the process, but I want to let you guys know that we'd never have time for everyone to make their entire Copper Jackal, I don't think. So Do you guys have a concept, or has anyone made theirs yet?
I don't know about the other guys, but I think I've got all my bits and pieces figured out.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah, I'm mechanically done. I wanted to focus more on story. I didn't do really much other than think about a basic concept, because I think with these guys and us being this level, we would have had that time to kind of come together as a group and discuss, like, maybe, you know, we did a past adventure and you learned this about Merrick or something like that.
Sure. I like that. In fact, I wanted to throw a concept at you guys that I think would be kind of interesting. This is spitballing, but let's take it from here and see where it kind of fractals out to. I like the idea that because in the Copper Jackals, there are certain groups that they call together on purpose, these sort of task forces. And I like the idea that you would specifically be a task force. And you can come up with a name, you could be nameless, whatever it is. But I like the idea that when something particular goes wrong, this task force has done well in the past dealing with certain kinds of threats. I also like the idea that perhaps there was, like, I don't want to overcomplicate it, but I like that perhaps you're all powerful enough and trustworthy enough that there's something that maybe each of you have a piece of, that maybe can come together and do something special or important. Again, I don't want to overcomplicate it or make it like double MacGuffin-y. We already have copper boons and all that stuff, but not something as powerful as like a rod of 7 parts, but just something that could be used, even if it's something as simple as a book of lore, because in Dragongrin, that's scarce. So what do you guys think about being a task force like Chris suggested? What do you think the kind of tasks would be that you would handle? And I can kind of just take it down the line. Like, so do you want to go left to right, or you guys want to just kind of jump in and...
I'll form the head.
Go for it. All right, so we're going to be Power Rangers or Voltron, Voltra Rangers. So, yeah, and maybe that idea, you know what, let's put a pin in the you each have a piece of something idea for now. But I like the idea that you're a task force. What would you specialize in?
Well, I think it would have to be, I mean, you're talking about level 14s. You're talking about seasoned jackals. You're talking about people probably at the top of their chapters. So I would think that whatever we did, it would have to be limited to just a small few that really could attain this level. I wouldn't think there was a lot of us running around. So maybe something that we're kind of the last resort, the last, you know, they send us in when they've tried everything else, you know, that kind of thing. Maybe everybody's known for a little bit of collateral damage, quote unquote. Like Chris was talking about being a blighter. You know, he's powerful, but he destroys shit too. So, you know, it's just something like that. Just a thought.
Yeah.
So, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, I kind of like the idea that I know that as you mentioned, my character can be a little destructive to the environment around him. I know that Heliodoro has the ability to like throw these energy blasts and stuff like that. So I'm not sure about the other two characters, but I do kind of like the idea that because we're powerful, we're kind of kept in the reserves because of the way that we're powerful. Like, maybe we shouldn't send these guys in to do the secret like spy type mission, because these guys will screw it up and blow up a tower by the time they're done.
Of the superheroes, maybe we're more like Hancock.
Well, looking at it from an almost mechanical point of view, so at level 17, you become a chapter avatar, I think it was. We're not chapter avatars, but essentially we're the next best thing. So kind of going off of what everyone else was saying, I feel like the 4 of us would be deployed for the stuff that essentially not only can no one else handle, but the stuff that has very, very widespread effects, like kingdom affecting things. Like say for some reason, like an actual dragon somehow did appear again, or the dismembered lord ended up throwing out like 1,000 war makers and just dropping them somewhere. Stuff like that, there's no point in trying to hide or be sneaky because the threat level is just too high. And other than the actual like chapter founders themselves, we're the only ones who could probably handle it.
And that would also lend itself to a lot of, kind of a lot of backstory and a lot of, the story of Flair who did this or Merrick who did this, and everybody could come up with their own little, piece of that, but there'd be a lot added to it. It would give us a lot of play as far as, what we've done in the past to kind of bring us together.
That's perfect. And in fact, what I'm going to do is kind of go into a little bit of detail of what a chapter is and why this matters. So there are mechanical benefits to chapters as laid out in the book. All right. So you have these abilities that you gain essentially spending time actually in the chapter. And so it's like the concept would be you're around these like-minded individuals. It grants you this thing called chapter renown. And it's this specialized training. Like it just to use a real world example, if you're in a bomb squad, you're going to get very good at disarming bombs. So it's represented mechanically by, like I said, these sort of augmentations of what you can do. What Marquise was talking about, a chapter avatar, and they are at level 17, you become the archetype of what a member of that chapter should aspire to become. You are so good at what you do that you're not just part of the bomb squad, you're a one-man bomb squad, that kind of a thing. And so I think it's probably a good idea now to talk about what chapters you chose, because I think that would be good to sort of find these connections of, okay, what chapters are you a part of and how would those destructive puzzle pieces sort of fit together? Marquise, what chapter did you choose?
So the chapter I went through, and you got to correct the name part. I think it's like the Arcanics of Nil, the Arcanist of Nil. I can't remember.
Yeah, Arcanics. The Arcanics of Nil.
Yeah, Arcanics of Nil. You want me to talk about why I chose that chapter?
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
All right, so I chose that chapter for two reasons. The first reason, because I played in a lot of Copper Jackals games. I've seen a lot of them run, and I've seen almost no one, if anyone, ever actually picked that chapter. And I thought I had a really cool idea in it where they were working with bleak stuff and they actually have to invent spells to get into it. And I also want to play an Eldritch Knight, and I like the idea of taking someone who's primarily melee, putting them in what's essentially the Arc Wizards of Dragongrin, and seeing what kind of story comes from that and why that person is in there.
So are you talking, because the Arcanics of Nil are like the Magitech inventors? Are you talking about, you're talking Alloy of Imminence?
Alloy of Imminence. There we go. I'm sorry.
Perfect. Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. And that's the idea, is that, yes, the Alloy of Imminence is what you described. It's not just I'm a divine caster or I'm an arcane caster, or in Dragongrin there's a type of magic called Imminence. No, we study the force of magic. And so I love that. So you're basically someone who is very deep into this chapter. And what he was talking about is there's an initiation for every chapter. And for this particular one, you have to successfully cast a spell that has never been cast before. And I love that concept because there's no mechanics tied to it. It's just a flavor thing, which I think can be really cool. All right, cool. So you have Marquise's character who's in the Alloy of Imminence.
Far from that?
Sure.
I don't know if you're down for it, but I would like to see Marquise create that spell and be able to use it in game.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, and at this point, he probably would have used it a lot, right? Like, Marquise, you can reskin any spell you want and make it something that you created 100%. And Chris, that's a great point, is that I would love to see that in play for this game, because that's what the mechanic, no, rather, the lack of mechanic is there for, to do something cool like that. So, Marquise, can you dream something up?
Yeah, so I actually already thought about this. My character, Flair, before she became a Copper Jackal, she had a little brother whose name was Snowlock. And essentially he died due to story reasons and everything, kind of set on her path. And there's a spell in the Elemental Evil Player's Companion called Snowlock Snowstorm. Now, and I'll talk more about this idea later because we talked about this with the whole Dragon Breath and everything. But essentially, Flair has a big connection to freezing ice magics and cold magic and stuff like that. So the spell she created, Snowlock Snowstorm, is essentially the idea that with the globe, with the focus that she has, the heirloom from her family and the memories of her brother, she's able to replicate essentially she's able to essentially create this massive snowstorm that's kind of fueled by the memories and the love she had for her brother and everything.
Perfect. And so that was the spell that she created, which I think is pretty powerful, and it's tied to something very strong. And I'd like to see how you kind of play with that and use that emotionally, because essentially every time you're using this spell, you're reminded of your dead brother. But, you know, in one way or another, how does that affect you? And I'm interested to kind of see you play with that. So That's really awesome. Great. So we have this sort of archmage, this person from the Alloy of Imminence, this chapter that's focused on magic and the study of the bleak and the study of imminence and how this all ties together in this grim world of Dragongrin. Jake, what chapter did you choose and why?
So Heliodoro is a monk, and I'm using I don't know if it says on my overlay. I can't see my overlay for some reason. No, it doesn't say. So he's a Way of the Sun Soul, which is actually one of the options from the Sword Coast Adventurers Guide. For anybody that wants to know where the mechanics come from. So a lot of his abilities are very sun focused. As I was flipping through all of the list of chapters and trying to think of where this character would come from. At this point, I don't have a lot of his backstory figured out yet. The reason for choosing Onslaught came primarily out of the character build itself. When I built him mechanically as a Sun Soul monk, he just does a crap ton of damage on these attacks. And as a monk, monks get, with the key points, and at this level, he's got a ton of key points. So, he can land an attack, land another attack with extra attack, and then get 2 bonus unarmed attacks that also function with some of these radiant sunburst and high energy attacks that Chris was talking about. I'm just doling out massive damage, and I've got a lot of resistances and immunities as well from being a high level monk, that it just seemed to fit that he's a brute force. And with his ultimate kind of his monk focus being this Way of the Sun Soul, that is Dragongrin, he wants to bring the light of the sun, and his basic brutal mantra is, if he can't convert you, he's going to sear you with the power of the sun. He believes that he gives mercy to his enemies by killing them quickly with massive amounts of damage. And part of it, he's just a brute force, and Onslaught seemed a perfect fit for him.
Perfect. And you know what I'm actually going to do? I didn't do this, but I will. I'm going to screen share. So let's do a screen share here. So what we're looking at is a PDF version of the Copper Jackals. You can get this on absolutetabletop.com. This is the chapter name here. So Onslaught is what Jake is talking about. And then each chapter has this sort of quick description. So Onslaught is tough as nails warriors who pack a wallop and can take a beating. Each of these, if you can see my cursor kind of floating around here on the right-hand side, this is the copper coin that you get when you join this chapter, signifying that you're part of this chapter. And you can kind of see there's different information about the chapter. Here go the renowns we were talking about. I really love the motto. We don't go to war. We bring war with us. And so I love this because most of the time, because Onslaught is sort of, I don't want to call them the go-to Copper Jackal, but I find that this is probably everyone's most sort of like brutal, like, hey, I want to play an expendable. This is the chapter they go to because it's kind of the foot soldier, Gears of War, kind of style. I love the idea of an Onslaught monk. We've not seen that I know of. If we have, it's in a game I missed. So I love the idea that there's going to be this brutal, burning devastation with the finesse of a monk in Onslaught. I absolutely love that. I want to mention one other thing that I want you to think about, and it's that I'm going to share my screen one more time here. So the chapter renowns that we, let's see here. The chapter renowns, they go in levels. Specifically, there's one that I'm looking at, the chapter renown 3, the Convictus armor. Now, at the chapter level that we're playing at, this is not something that they'll have access to. But Jake, I want you to think, or no, do you? I don't even know my own book. What renown do you guys have at this point? Do you guys know? I can go to the progression chart real quick here.
Yeah, I've forgotten.
Number 3. I looked it up today.
We were all the way through
Is it
3.
Yeah.
Okay,
We
good.
have access.
Yeah. And honestly, listen, we wrote this book, but it was a lot of playtesting and it changed. So the chapter renown 3, the Invictus armor that I'm now very, very far away from, is Convictus armor. Whatever armor you're wearing becomes Convictus armor and gains the following abilities. Once per day, you may command your armor to expand and thicken, encasing your body in full protection. It's like supposed to be this stand and take a blast from a dragon kind of armor. So, Jake, I don't want you to go into it right now, but at some point, be thinking about what that looks like as a monk and what that would look like, and how that would act. Because I see your screen here. I'll share. You've got this sort of spalder and this gauntlet and this belt, and I would just love to hear kind of how that would develop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I also think it's important at this point. I want to show you guys my overlay.
Oh,
So
that's amazing.
very special thanks to Chris Wilhelm. He made this by request. I want you to specifically note the infinity on both my passive perception and my armor class. That is IRL.
That is brilliant. Well
So
done.
I just wanted to share that with everybody. I'm going to jump over to the chat. I haven't visited the chat long enough. So let's see here.
His chapter redacted.
Oh, and also, can I have one of you volunteer to take any questions from the chat and put them in our comments if I don't see them?
I can take care of that.
Awesome. If you could just pop it into our chat, that way I can make sure to not miss any great ones.
There is one from the Escapist Club talking about how do you do overlays. What I would suggest is Lloyd from Jarl DM did a great video kind of talking about how to use overlays. To make them, Photoshop and a lot of practice.
Yeah, it's true. And the good news about overlays is that once you have one that you like, it's a template usually. So you can just kind of hot swap a font. Like right here, you can change this font and then change it to another picture of me barfing rainbows. Like if you have a couple of those. And then you can like hot swap these little, items up here. So you can start getting a vibe. Like, okay, here's my sort of Asian themed D&D one. And then here's my dark fantasy one, and kind of just hot swap some stuff. So that's a great question.
Or find friends that do it really well and be really nice to them like I do.
Totally.
It's always a method.
Yeah.
Pizza as bribery works.
Well, I only live about 30 minutes from you, so I can actually do that, Chris.
Oh, I didn't know you guys lived that close together.
Yeah, maybe 30, 40 minutes.
I was going to say, I think we've got like 5 Houston people inside the group, actually.
Yeah.
I know there's a couple of people from Texas, but I didn't know you guys were so close.
Just me, Chris, Bill Fortney, Justin Hamilton, and
Jeremy Lilly.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking. Was Jerry.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a bunch of us all kind of there. Anyway.
So cool. So I'm sort of noticing this pattern developing here. I'm not going to mention what it is because I want to see what you guys think. But so Chris, tell me a little bit about what chapter you're from and then why.
Yeah, I chose Stormbringers, and it was kind of an odd choice being a druid because there is what is it, the other one that's kind of more druidy, the Spine of the Old Vale. But I actually really liked the idea of how the initiation is. It's you're presented with an empty field and you must deter a single member of the Stormbringers from crossing it. And I thought being a Blighter druid, that would be something that he could maybe manipulate the field to turn the field against that Stormbringer that he was facing, who's probably normally something like a Battle Master fighter and has to really change how he fights and things like that. And kind of like Marquise's character, my character is a little almost out of place with his own chapter because it seems like it's a little bit more tacticians and things like that. And Merrick is more of a caster heavy type druid.
So I'm going to screen share as well again. And so let's take a look at. So this is what we're looking at as far as the Stormbringers. You see this is their coin, and all the coins are very different. So this coin represents, you see in the bottom, there's a key, there's lightning, there's a doorway, and then there's what looks like sort of battle plans. And it's the essential, they are adaptable and strategic controllers of battlefield conditions. So a powerful team of Stormbringers can come in, and like Chris said, a Blighter Druid who's trained in these ways can absolutely change the tide of battle for other fighters. Things like, well, here's their motto: clear skies are a canvas, sure footing a mirage. So let's look at the chapter renown 3 for them. Stormwatcher Goggles. Once per long rest, as a reaction, you may impose advantage or disadvantage on a creature that you can see. Your Stormwatcher Goggles, through Imminence Magic, allow you to see multiple outcomes of an event, allowing you to intervene to assist an ally or hinder a foe. So you basically get to grant advantage or disadvantage. So I love this idea, and I love that you're taking it with a Blighter Druid. And I like that you're sort of this outcast. So very cool, man. And then Drake, why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. Nicodemus is a Sarek wizard. Sarek is one of the new races that Tim and James came up with in Dragongrin. It's basically, for lack of a better phrase, like an undead. It's skeleton, some flesh maybe here and there, but it's pretty much just an undead. He is. Can
I mention something since it's brand new?
Go ahead.
James and I are talking about what the common person would call it as bone flesh, because we want it to be this sort of strange amalgamation. It's not purely skeletal, so when they talk, they don't have to do the 1980s movie where they just go and the sound comes out, or like even the ha ha ha. But I want these, probably a great example of it. You want to talk about getting flack for liking a movie. I was a big fan of the old Masters of the Universe movie because it came out when I was a kid. But if you look at the Skeletor in that, how he sort of has those lips, that's a really good representation of how I imagine the Sarek. Now, they can look any way you want, and they could be full on, like Drake, I saw yours has like the missing bottom jaw. There are going to be Sarek that look like that. But it's this bone flesh because healing magic will sort of work on them. And we're going to get into that later, but go on.
Yeah, so I was going with the wizard. He went with a chapter called The Unfallen. The Unfallen, it says, are the necromantic warriors fighting for the forces of good. Basically, and I'm just going through the description here, Tim, if you want to screen share, they're a chapter of Copper Jackals who are masters of necromancy of all kinds. They collect corpses in all manner of places and raise them as an undead army, serving the Copper Jackals. As this guy is pretty much an undead himself, it was the only chapter that I thought he would fit in. And the fact that he was fighting for good kind of added to a little bit of what I was thinking about where he came from. But the initiation for this one is you have to be buried alive, then exhumed and revived by the corpse tenders. So it's kind of a weird initiation thing. But what I was thinking for him, and also I think that coin, by the way, is amazing with all the runes around it. I was thinking, Tim, you had talked about 20 years ago, the Dismembered Lord's been in power for 20 years, and that he did that through raising all of the dead from parts of the sphere mountains. And I wanted this character to have been part of that in some way, that he had helped the Dismembered Lord in some way to raise all those undead, and through some way he was actually killed in that process. But part of his curse was to basically live forever, and what he's doing now is trying to undo what he was part of creating. So he does have kind of the necromantic magic and stuff too, but he's just trying to right the wrong that he was such a big part of. It's kind of my thought for this guy.
Sure. And I think part of that would be interesting because, one of the things that it's flavor only, but just to give you an idea, the Sarek don't have a full memory of who they were in life. So I like the idea that you have this sort of spotted memory of all this stuff, but the thing that you remember most is just this guilt, this awful guilt. And so you have these pieces of this terrible puzzle that you were part of something terrible and you want to try to redeem yourself for it. I think that's really cool. And that chapter is the exact chapter that I would use. Their motto, loyal unto death and beyond. This is not to be taken figuratively. So what kind of themes are you guys seeing or hearing? Because what immediately stuck out to me without forcing it is everyone seems to represent. Oh, I'm going to share Chris's screen. That is a Sarek. That's perfect, man. I love it. Be thinking about this because I want to give a shout out to somebody in the chat, but I sort of saw this elemental theme, and I don't want to take it too literal or on the nose or ham-fisted, but Marquise mentioned ice. Jake mentioned fire. Chris, you mentioned blighting, which to me could say earth. And then with death, I just saw this, I don't know. It was like these sort of twisted takes on the elements. What do you guys think about? I mean, it doesn't have to be literal, but why would that group be together? You've got this person who specializes in the undead, a person who specializes in battlefield conditions, someone who is this master mage, and then someone who is just there to brutalize. So what are you thinking?
From what I'm seeing, it's not just the element, it's also the themes and how we fight. You have two people, me and Chris, who specialize on making essentially like hellacious battlefield conditions. And then you have two people who specialize in fighting in those hellacious battlefield conditions, which is the undead skeleton guy and the monk who can just zip right through it. So not only is the elements thing I'm seeing playing a theme, but also the fact that when we work as a group, essentially only we can really fight there, not even our enemies can really fight there because we have so much control around the battlefield, and only we can kind of stand those super aggressive, super violent conditions.
And I keep, and this doesn't have to be the literal name, but I keep hearing that perhaps the name of your, sort of task force is the Tide Turners. They call you in when it's a close fight. And it's like, hey, we just need you to make it better for us. Do your thing. Like, it's really close. We only have a limited amount of men. We have a limited amount of resources. But the way you all work together, you control the battlefield. And then I imagine there's a sort of symbiotic relationship in addition to, and stop me or change this, but, Drake and Chris, you guys seem like Jake and Drake. You guys are these weapons, but I almost see you as pairing up like one battlefield controller with one sort of bruiser, and you guys kind of, so that you can tactically move. Like, I don't know. What are you guys thinking about something like that?
Yeah, I kind of thought about that a little bit, like with the monk, with what I can do with like Merrick as far as like druid spells, I can alter the environment, and the monk still has so much speed that even if the monk was at half speed because of something I did, he's still drastically faster than a normal character.
Yeah, I move almost at normal speed if I'm at half speed. At 14, I'm up to 55 is my speed.
Yeah, so I like that idea. I do like the idea of the Tide Turners, and it gives me kind of an inspiration on like maybe there was a large-scale battle that like it was critically important that we took out this supply line, and they were like, well, we can't spare more than 4 people, and that's how we got our name.
I think that's great. So they know that you can go in and stop a supply line. And the other thing I like about this too is based on the way that your characters are, it would be curious, but in other words, you could stop an entire supply line without jumping out in the middle of the road and going, I'm going to punch your wagons off. Like snow, blighting, or trees falling. Like these are things that I almost imagine you could be in doing your job, and when you do it right, no one ever knows you were there. But if you need to make your presence known, when you do, it's like total decimation. So I almost imagine like your commanding officers are like, let's make this one covert. Because if you guys are uncovered, that's when it's Vash the Stampede status. Everything starts blowing up and, hellfire and damnation. What do you think about something like that?
I think
that.
Go ahead, Chris.
The caveat, though, is just because we can cause collateral damage just with our class choices, that, like, there's rumors of us. Like how Vash starts at the beginning of the series. People are like, he's the 50 billion double dollar man. And, like, nobody knows who they're talking to because there's not a good picture of them. But, like, they'll be in a bar and they'll hear rumors about the nonsense that they did last week.
I heard the Tide Turners, destroyed a whole town. They were supposed to go in and, escort somebody to safety, and the whole thing is leveled like that. And that's not really what happened. Maybe a building was collapsed. Maybe you did level the whole town. Nobody knows. But I like that idea that you can sort of tactically control, but if it's like, yeah, you know what, here we go, crack your knuckles and wreck shop. So anyway, and these are all high level ideas. We don't have to make full decisions here, but I kind of wanted to get an idea of what everybody was thinking.
Hey, Tim, I got a quick question about the Sarek, if you don't mind.
Sure.
One of the things I know this is relatively new. You just came up with this a couple days ago, but where you have to eat basically a level 1 spell once a day, as that's their sustenance. I think you called it imminent sustenance. So he doesn't have to eat or drink, but he actually has to devour a spell once a day. Can it be someone else's spell, or does it
I think yes. I think yes. And there's no mechanic for that. Just what Drake is talking about is we have a race in our race play test, the Sarek, as you talked about. They don't need food, but once a day they have to eat magic. Now, we haven't fully fleshed out what that means or mechanically, but essentially I thought it was interesting, and I bounced it off James and he thought it was cool too. They literally eat on magic. They're not the undead that feed off of brains or flesh or anything like that. Here's an interesting thing, though. In a pinch, you can feed off of another Sarek. It doesn't last forever, but I thought that would be kind of an interesting thing. Undead that eat other undead rather than people having to worry as much. The thing that people would have to worry about is Sarek who aren't necessarily good aligned, keeping these sort of mage farms where you're basically a caster that has to just make food. So yeah, I think it can be any spell, and I think, have fun with that. And it's a cool role play element. But the mechanics are they would gain, if they don't do that in a day, they gain a level of exhaustion. And then after 3 days of not doing it, you essentially revert into actual undead. You lose all your memories and you're just like a white or a zombie or something like that. Now, again, that's all very loose, but the concept is there. Marquis said, or no, Chris said in the chat, I told you to eat before the combat. I'm not pulling over. I'm not pulling over the supply line so that we can go to McSpelly's. So I've got some ideas. I think, as far as the chapters you've chosen and sort of the things that you've told me about your characters, I am starting to kind of have my wheels turn about what I'm going to throw at you and how it's going to work. Now, it's also important to note, if you're watching this video, and again, you're like, what are Copper Jackals? Kind of go in more detail. There is a Copper Jackals experience level. That means that when I'm dealing with challenge ratings, I have to up the challenge rating or these guys will walk through it. Some people's complaints about 5th edition is that already combat is something that if the enemy doesn't get to go first, you're in danger unless you spread the enemies or create other challenges for the players to just walk right through it. This like doubles or triples that. There were play tests where the Copper Jackals went first and the play test ended. Chris was in a play test like that. I think a couple of you guys were where it's like, okay, here go the bad guys. Everyone has a turn. I'm like, and the play test is over. So I'm going to make sure to so that it's not going to just be blast, 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 blast. It's going to be, okay, there are 2 people to save. Which one are you going to save? Or things of that nature to where it's like, you might be all powerful to a degree in Dragongrin, but you still have to make choices, and your choices are going to have effects. So let us go to the chat. Oh, So here's what I want to do. I want to call out someone who has actually emailed me, and I haven't replied to you yet because honestly, man, it's just been super busy. But Nathan Thurston, you're on my to-do list. He said, if any of you guys, the players, are interested, once you have finished your character sheet, I'd love to convert it to a digital character sheet and give you a free copy. No obligation to use it. Would you guys be down with Nathan doing that for us?
I'm down.
Just to kind of...
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm down.
I think what he's talking about doing is basically doing a because he designs a character builder for 5e that kind of looks like an old school style character builder.
Dude, I love that.
But I think he's talking about doing like a Copper Jackal selection inside the settings so that you can actually build Copper Jackals starting with the characters we present.
Dude, Nathan, I will absolutely take you up on that if you're still watching. If you're not watching, I'm going to email you tomorrow. I would love to make a Copper Jackal creator and even license out the intellectual property so that people can make the Copper Jackals easily, because I think that would be really cool if you could just select your boons and do all that stuff right in there. I would love to do that. So yes, very interested. And I think you emailed me like 2 days ago, and it's been one of those where I'm just still catching up from that week we lost during the hurricane and no power and stuff. But so yes, I'm interested. I think that would be super radical.
Yeah, the character generator is really great. Unfortunately, my computer did not agree with it, so I could not do a review on the channel about it. But I've been following it as he's developing it, and it looks better each time.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, I'm super in. I think that would be really cool, and it would be great to have a tool like that that people could use to make Copper Jackals pretty quickly, especially because already there are plenty of pre-gens like on the internet of actual 5th edition characters. I'm actually going to click to a section of the book here called Copper Archetypes. So this is probably a good time to share this because these are probably some things we could build into the character generator. In this book, there are these things called copper boons. And the copper boons are the things that you are granted mechanically that give you abilities beyond the average adventurer. Let me put Chris on the spot. Do you have your boons chosen yet, or is that something you're still going to do?
Yeah, no, I've got my boons chosen. I went Eminence Assailant, which gives me a +1 to... Am I muted?
No, sorry.
Okay, good. I switched windows and wasn't sure.
Oh, gotcha. No, you're good. You're good.
Eminence Assailant, which gives me a +1 to spell attack and spell DC twice. And then I also took Greater Copper Magician, giving me the Eldritch Blast and Vicious Mockery spells.
Perfect. So what these are is these boons are, they fit on top of your existing character. And so this can be kind of overwhelming when you have to choose these boons. And I'm going to do a screen share here. There's an alphabetized section as well as a section that's laid out similarly to the Pathfinder feats. I'm going to kind of show you the whole caboodle here in a second. But first, I want to show you. So here go the copper boons alphabetized. We're at the end. So it shows you the name and then sort of what it belongs to, subcategory and all this. But you have to choose these as you create a Copper Jackal. Now, as Copper Jackals of level 14, you have to choose a few of these. So what we did is we created these Copper Jackal archetypes. And these are what I would love to build into the character creator. Basically, it shows you, okay, this archetype is Copper Butcher. Take these 4 boons and you'll have a combatant who deals increasing amounts of carnage with their weapons. So that way it's kind of like quick start. And what it would be cool to do is have pre-gens. So it's like, okay, here's a human fighter who's a Copper Butcher or a Copper Collector, an expert at collecting and using magical items. And it shows you the 4 boons that you would use from up here to create that combination. And so finally what I'll do is I'll scroll way up and I'll show you this, the list view that we're talking about. So after the alphabetized section, you've got your archetypes. But before the alphabetized section, you've got these. So these are weapon boons, and it's these simple, easy to use charts. So support boons. The boon, this affects the environment. I want to create a barrier or a bridge. I need to be level 4, and the feature type is I'll create cover. So I can take Copper Bulwark, and then I come down here, and I find it. Now, one of the things that we hadn't considered when we were naming all this stuff is everything has copper in front of it. So you basically have a long C-section. But I come down here and I find Copper Bulwark, and it gives me an extended, expanded version. You can magically pull elements from the environment together to create an impromptu shield or bridge for you and your allies. So that is what a Copper Boon is, and that's kind of what's laid out. So Nathan, it would be cool if we could maybe build some archetypes in there and do all that kind of stuff. But I also wanted everybody to understand who's watching this, what we're talking about when we say Copper Boons. So any final questions for me, guys? Because I'm willing to hang out. We can take questions in the chat. Yeah. But I think I kind of have what I need as far as where I'm headed. But what else you got? What else you want to talk about?
So there's some things I want to discuss about Flare, my character. The first thing being, so I took the stage background for, because it kind of fits with the whole story. And when I was looking, because it gives you 2 extra languages in addition to the one she gets as being a human variant, essentially. I was thinking of this idea that basically, since she is a fighter, but she's kind of slowly being fully initiated in the magic and everything, one of the 3 languages she chose to be something that kind of like the fundamental languages for magic, if that makes sense. So I was looking through the languages. I saw Elfish, so I took that. I saw Draconic, so I took that. But the last one I was thinking about, and this is the reason I bring it up, is I was thinking like, so what if there was a language that's essentially basically called Bleak Speak that I could use for this and for magic and everything?
So there's something that sort of exists like this. So I think the Bleak Speak is actually a cool idea. And I want to throw an idea at you of what I would want it to be in relation to, like, the language common, how there's undercommon. So in Dragongrin, these ancient beings known as the Titans ruled, and they were sort of the creators of many things. And one of the things they did was they actually have Titan speak. So I'm going to share this PDF again. And if you look here at the beginning of the book, if you want to get an idea of what Dragongrin's about, this is one of the first pages of the book, and it says grin, noun, pronunciation, grin, etymology, from the Titan speak. And it's difficult to see here, but if I zoom in a little bit, this is Titan speak. And so, whoa, buddy. Here we go. This is Titan speak. So to me, Titan speak this is going to be in the Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin, but essentially they're glyphs that have power. So when you use script, certain variations and combinations of these glyphs can do very powerful things. And this is tied to a force called imminence. So I would love it if Bleak Speak is sort of this undercommonist version of Titan Speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So in that case, the 3 I would probably take them as Draconic, and then Bleak Speak, and then Titan Speak.
Perfect. And so, and the reason why I say Titan Speak and Bleak Speak is because Titan Speak it's, I would say, almost maybe even literally impossible for a humanoid creature to speak. It's this crazy different language that's like very difficult to recreate. So I love the idea that Bleak Speak would be the best that a creature like us could do. So it would be like Titan Speak. You study Titan Speak, but you're like, yeah, I speak Bleak Speak. I mean, I can read Titan, but I can't say it, and I thought that was an interesting concept, is being able to read the language and know the concept of what it means, but then have to put it in a long drawn out sort of humanoid, what our minds would understand. So yeah, I'm super down with that. We got a comment from the Mappernomicon. It says, when you're running the campaign, how do you deal with spatial awareness and movement? Maps? Just a general description? Are we going to see maps? So I am pretty big on theater of the mind. And the reason why is because I'm more cinematic and flavorful than I am tactical and rules focused, if that makes sense. So for me, you won't see any maps. I like to use pictures. So I'll use images, paintings. And then what I'll do is, you won't see this, but I'll have on my screen sort of a painting pulled up, like a really cool fantasy painting, so that I can look around and have a sense of space. Now, how do you do that with players? I just kind of keep track of who said what and who's where. And that's how I do it. I mean, how do you guys handle this?
Sorry.
I'm big
I
on
do-
theater of the mind.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was gonna say sorry about that. My mouse is like crazy. It clicks like 100 times right now. It depends on the group. I know that the guys that I usually play with, they like having maps. They especially like having regional maps. So usually we use Roll20 to throw up like a map of the continent that they're on. In dungeons, I use maps, and I use the Roll20. What do they call it? It's the lighting feature that they have inside there. And basically you can set how wide a torchlight is inside there. And it hides the map if their torchlight isn't lighting up that section.
That's awesome. That's like fog of war for torches.
Exactly. And it's really cool for campaign use. We used it inside this dungeon, and it added a whole lot. And from the DM side, I don't see that whole fog of war type thing. Instead, I can move things around on the map behind them. So while they're traveling down the hallway, there's zombies that are following them around and they don't know it yet.
I had just played in a game over on the Inroads Tavern site, a one-shot where he used the dynamic lighting in Roll20, and I had never used it before. Spectacular to come around the corner where I had been standing for a turn, and when I turned to go around that corner, all of a sudden saw like 6 enemies standing there that were there the whole time.
Yeah, see, that's awesome.
What I was going to say, Tim, regarding movement on the battlefield is I almost always have a map that I've drawn for my own use of the battlefield. This isn't one. This is for my Brigade Con build coming up, but it might be something like this on graph paper where I've laid out the scenario, and I use that to get a sense of where people are. And what I'll actually do is, if people, like Chris said, depending on the group, if I find that the players are asking almost every turn, how far am I, or how close am I to this, or where was this again, I'll show them that map. I'll put it up on the screen, turn my camera on it for a little bit. So even if it's just for like a minute, it gets it in their mind, and all of a sudden now they see what I'm seeing in my head. If it's too complex of a scene, or some players, they just can't keep all those moving parts straight. So focusing on their character instead of figuring out where they are. So I kind of play it by ear. I generally use, I think it's the Star Wars system of you're either close to mid-distance or far away from something. I don't necessarily tell them that, but in my head, so that if somebody says, well, am I close enough to do this? I'm going to fall 5 or 10 feet short. I'm going to let them move it anyway, because why wait an extra round for something just for mechanic's sake? You know what I mean?
In fact, that's one of the reasons why I don't use maps, is because I like, if something serves the narrative well, I'll allow it. And so I'll either fudge. I usually fudge in favor of the player, but occasionally I'll be like, you can't quite make it. Not to be unfair, but because of other things that are going on, it'll just ratchet up tension. And sometimes, especially I play online a lot, and it's difficult to keep track of all the pieces unless you're using something like Roll20. I also like to improv straight out of my face. And sometimes the map I'm thinking of is just like, I'm like, this was a swamp until right now. And guess what? Before I show it to the players, you're now in a desert. And so it's also kind of tough to switch that stuff up on the fly. But yeah, I think that's good. Marquise, is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, I'm the same way. Sometimes I'll fudge stuff, but I primarily like theater of the mind because, like you said, you improv a lot, I improv a lot. So halfway through an encounter, I might think of something I want to add to the encounter to kind of change the difficulty of it as it's going on, if that makes sense.
That makes sense to me. Yeah, absolutely.
One of the questions,
Okay.
Tim, was about: are there any series out there where there's ordinary characters through minting and blah blah blah? I know there's a ton of stuff that has all the minting. I know I've personally done 3 or 4 of them. I know Jake's done a bunch. I'm sure Chris has and Marquise has. I know there's a ton of minting sessions or Copper Jackal incursions, but I'm not aware of any campaigns as of yet that have gotten from the beginning through becoming Copper Jackals and then continuing. Just
Right.
to answer that question.
And I think one of the reasons why is because here's the thing. Chris, you were talking before about touchstones.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go into a campaign knowing, hey, you guys are going to become Copper Jackals, but I want to start you off as level 1s, because you can't be minted into a Copper Jackal until you're level 3. So you'd have to play 3 levels, kind of just being adventurers and so on. So usually people start at the minting, because, and so I'm not suggesting that you were suggesting starting at level 1, but I think people start at the minting because it's the most interesting point. I will say that I don't know that I've seen a minting and then the progression into the Jackals or a task force. Have we seen that yet?
No. I did a game where it was like post minting. They were very kind of early mid levels, and there was supposed to be 2 sequels, and I just haven't had the right like grouping and timing to get those 2 sequels going, but they're higher levels, and they're kind of one story that varies across who's part of it. It's really more about the bad guy than it is about the players involved. Kind of like Star Wars is more about Anakin Skywalker's journey, not necessarily Luke's. But I've done a home game where we did an episodic adventure where they got minted. They did like 2 missions, and then we did a high level, your characters are going to TPK at the end of this kind of thing. And it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah. So to answer your question, I don't think we have seen that, but I would love to see it. And I think that we will see more of it as the book gets printed. We're in the process of the final revisions. These guys have a copy that's not even been released yet. But these changes you've seen, I don't think these have even been rolled out publicly, but we're doing all this because we're getting the books print ready, and I should have it upstairs with me, but I don't. It's about this thick, all this stuff in print, and that is going to be before the end of the year. You're going to see the Copper Jackals in print format. And so I think that when more people can actually hold this at their table and bring it home and read it, in addition to having the digital copy that's much easier to use and maybe even using that character generator, I think you're going to see more of that stuff. So that's pretty rock and roll. Got another question. So let's see here. It was up here. Got to scroll. All right. So the Mappernomicon has another question. He basically says, okay, so he says, are we going to see, oh, hang on guys, stop putting stuff in the chat. I can't read the question. He says, are we going to see any coterminous overlay from the other worlds? So Aeronoth classes and monsters and Kea recipes. So there has been bits of this already. If, as far as in our game, maybe. I don't want to spoil anything. Well, no, I'm going to spoil. So spoiler alert for any of the stuff that we've run in our campaign world so far. One of my characters in the Winds of Sorceline campaign is from Aeronoth, and that has already been revealed. Matt's character, Orin, can sort of, when he's dreaming, he can teleport through different time and space, and he is currently ended up in Aeronoth. And this is a huge, biggest Provoker Season 1 spoiler. So I'll give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. At the end of Season 1 of the Provokers, Dice becomes a Copper Jackal. So we have seen this, and it sort of kind of happened. I don't know, Mappernomicon, if you know this exactly, but when you said specifically Kea recipes, there is a cookbook on absolutetabletop.com, and we're going to be doing I think a video series in November, kind of leading up to Thanksgiving, where we cook different things from the book and film it and just talk about gaming stuff. But it's a cookbook, and you can get it on absolutetabletop.com right now. It's called The Cookbook of the Realms, Volume 1. It's got real-life recipes and also in-game recipes with mechanics. So hopefully that answers it. But yeah, you're going to see a lot of that stuff. As far as in this game, All right, I'll tell you something else. It probably wasn't public knowledge, but Matt Click was going to run a game for BrigadeCon. He had a bunch of stuff come up, and he's going to be moving that weekend, and it's kind of like going to be very difficult for him to run anything. But our games were going to link. If you notice, any astute people will notice that his game was called Into the Bleak, and our game was called Into the Bleak, and we were planning it so that the events from his game, basically the things that happened, were going to come through the Bleak, and that was going to be the things that you fought in your game. So that was going to be the concept, was tying these things together using the Bleak. But unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do that exactly, but just know that, yeah, that's the plan. We want to do that, and we're going to continue to do that kind of stuff. Jake wants to go over some boons. What was it, Drake?
Oh, no, I was going to say I had 2 questions. One of them was about boons. So if Jake wants to go into that, that's fine.
Oh, perfect. So, yeah, we're going to talk about copper boons now. So everybody get ready to get booned up.
Yeah, and it wasn't so much that I had any questions or anything. I was just curious because I know Chris went over his, and it might not be as obvious once we're in game, what the boons are or how they kind of play in. But I chose, originally I looked at the copper archetype and I just lost my PDF. Where did it go? I looked at the copper archetype for monk. There is a copper monk archetype. But I didn't like, not that I didn't like the archetype, I didn't like it for Heliodoro. I didn't think it was a good fit. So I kind of picked something that, I picked the obvious one first, the copper gauntlet, which does kind of show up on my overlay. You can see that he's got these kind of gauntlets with fire, kind of a mix of the copper gauntlet and the sun power. And that's going to give him some additional weapon ability, a weapon that can't be disarmed. It's interesting to use that as a monk at this level, because the damage of it is the same as his normal unarmed strike. So it's not really giving a damage per se. It's almost like a flavor thing at this point. But I still like it.
The copper gauntlet?
And then, yeah. And then
okay, cool.
I really liked this next boon. Just the way it works. I want to bring it up so I can actually get the details of it. But what I chose was Copper Psyche.
Cool.
Or Copper Psych. I don't know how you intended that.
Psyche, yeah.
I've always been a fan of the, way back in 2nd edition, my second character I ever played was a psionic. And I just love the mental powers, and this kind of reminded me of that. And it's basically mechanically the copper, this copper psyche thing. It's just like this big mind blast that you can basically roll a fistful of dice on damage. It's kind of a once a day thing, but I look at it as kind of like in the heat of battle, just coupling with this last boon that I chose. It's almost see this as like a classic anime shot or something, because my final boon that I chose is Copper Flight. And I just see him in the air, just kind of throwing his arms wide, and this blast of energy that radiates out. And if I'm reading this right, is going to do 5d8 of damage.
So let's actually, I've got it screen shared all, because this would be a great opportunity to show people exactly kind of what the boons are. And we'll go a little more in depth with this one, because one of the other things we've included in this book, there's a DM section at the end. And in the DM section, it talks about how you could basically pull any of these boons and with a little bit of finesse, use them as a feat if you wanted to do that. Some of them, like this one in particular, might not fit the character, but so it's Copper Psyche. This is an assault boon. The subcategory, it shows you what it does, damage. The feature type, it's ranged, like he said. And you have to be a level 8 to use this. So what does it do? Like he said, it's this psychic bomb. It's just... So once per short or long rest, as a standard action, you may emit a psychic blast in a 60-foot cone in front of you. Each creature in the affected area must succeed on an intelligence saving throw, the DC of which equals 8 plus your intelligence or wisdom modifier, whichever's higher. Now, a lot of the boons have this in there so that they can be used with multiple classes. And then it says, plus your proficiency bonus. Roll a number of d8s equal to your proficiency bonus. Creatures who fail the saving throw suffer that much psychic damage. And it bypasses all physical damage resistances. So yeah, you'd be a level 14. You would actually do, yeah, I think you had it right. So basically your proficiency bonus worth of d8s.
At a DC 16.
Right. So
for me,
just in a 60-foot cone. I mean, that could level an army of minions, you know, just boom, laid out.
Yeah. And I like that it's a, it's a, you know, once per rest kind of thing. You know, it's not something, these boons aren't something that we're going to come in and just start spamming a fight with it. You know, I chose flight, which I believe is also a once per long rest or something like that. But I only get 10 minutes of flight. But that basically means during a big boss battle, I can be flying around. Like Chris said, like we were talking earlier about Chris and Marquise kind of laying down these, you know, altering the terrain, combine my speed and my ability to fly. And I don't need to worry about that. I move above that, what the enemies are struggling with, and I can lay down huge amounts of damage from the air. And not to spoil anything, because I really can't, because I don't fully know what I'm going to do with this, but that plays into kind of what I'm thinking about how the Convictus armor could potentially come into play from a flight position to suddenly armor up. And, you know, that's just kind of where I'm thinking.
I'm thinking like that's, to me, it's absolutely something like the movie Kashurn, or like this intense anime-esque. That's what a Copper Jackal is supposed to be, especially a high-level one. Like you just said, in addition to what you can already do as a character, you can now fly, do a psychic blast, and put on this just insane armor. And I love that. And so I think that's super cool.
He's going to turn himself into a missile.
Right. a flaming monk missile, which is fantastic. Go ahead.
At level 14 flight, for level 14 standard, you know, straight out of the player's handbook, it's not uncommon for characters to have flight. There's at least 2 or 3 classes and subclasses that gain flight at level 14 anyway. And that's like an all the time thing. You know, there's a lot of love and hate for flying, and, you know, the Aarakocra are a much maligned race because of it, and other reasons. But it didn't feel like it was too out of place, and I like it as a boon as opposed to, hey, I'm just going to fly around all the time. I like it as I got to think about this. I got to think about when ability.
Right. And that's kind of the point of a lot of these boons, is to the way that we want to describe them is it's not something that you're going to just be able to say, oh, I can do all this now. It's like they're that extra push where one adventurer would die. A Copper Jackal is going to survive because they have these boons in this one tight spot. Okay, I need to fly, but I can only do it for a short time. Like he said, he's not whizzing around, but when he needs to get out of that collapsing temple, he may be the only one that survives. You know, that kind of thing. So the guys are asking me, and they have asked me, you know, like, hey, so what about magic items? Here's the thing about magic items using Copper Jackals. I think it makes sense that they would have them. I think we agreed on like uncommon. You run the risk of overload, but I trust these players. So when you're running a Copper Jackals game, You know, it's a little beyond what a normal game would be, but because the boons are limited in how often you can use them and the way they work, it usually, like I said, is that like, oh crap, what can we use? What's in my break glass? There's a fire. So if you guys want to use some uncommon magic items, I think that would be great. I would say just run them by me, making sure that it would exist in Dragongrin, or it wouldn't be some, you know, hyper rare thing that shouldn't be in your hands. But I trust you guys. So yeah, go for it. And you don't have to do that right now, but I think a magic item would be great. It can be equipment, it can be a weapon, it can be armor, it can be whatever you want. The thing I'm going to really try to do is make sure that I tax your resources enough that you're able to use all this cool stuff. I think with Copper Jackals games, they have to be turned up to an insane dial of deadliness to really feel like you're a Copper Jackal and not just walk through using only your class abilities. So yeah.
The one thing that I wanted to talk about is the uncommon item that I picked right now is a +1 staff. I was curious if I could instead use Be a Better Weapon Master and roll on the chart.
Yeah, that'd be fine. I would say, you know, you and I have to work on the mechanics of whatever you pick, because since that book's so good, it's system agnostic and it can be used. So yeah, just maybe, and I think we'd be fine with that. So yeah, roll it up. Use Be a Better Weapon Master on abtab.com, absolutetabletop.com. And then we can kind of just stat out whatever properties you get. That would be wicked, actually.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
cool.
I had a question on one of the boons that I took. Imminence memorization.
Sure. So let me show you the beauty right now. For anybody at home, this is the beauty of having this digitally. So good old-fashioned Control F. Imminence
Memorization.
So
which is one that I missed in the original book just because the layout apparently. I thought this was something that you added.
you have to be able to spell imminence. Where am I going wrong?
IMMINENCE.
Yeah.
And then,
Oh, it's there. You know what it is? My computer's going so slow that my screen's not catching up with me
keep going. Almost.
because I'm screen sharing. Here we go.
Yeah. There it is. So
There it is.
this is telling me that I can make a level 3 spell a cantrip.
That's correct.
I can make a fireball spell a cantrip.
Well, choose a spell you know.
Right.
Do you know Fireball?
I could. Yeah, absolutely. I haven't picked my
Okay.
spells yet.
Of 3rd level or lower.
Right. But
Okay.
that just seems crazy OP to be
Well,
able to.
So you're able to commit it to an ethereal part of your memory using imminence. The spell is always prepared and does not count against your total number of spells known, and may be cast once per long rest
Okay.
without using a spell slot and without the need for material components. This boon can be taken multiple times in the effect stack.
See, I got excited for a second that I didn't finish reading the bottom part.
So
Never mind.
the idea is, the reason why it says make it a cantrip is because you can cast it essentially without the need for material components and without using a spell slot.
Right.
So it's like a free spell that you know, but it's like, oh, I used that last bit of juice. So trust me. Oh, and this, just to kind of give you, to everyone watching, there's a lot of homebrew out there that's very good. This was play tested for more than 50 hours, 50 hours, all these different concepts, and there were games going on and all that stuff. And so this went through many, many, many iterations, and there were a lot of little gotchas that we found, fixed, and changed. So as long as you know what you're in for, it's balanced within itself, if that makes sense. So if you're looking for an Avengers, that action movie that we were talking about earlier, this will deliver, but make sure you don't put your guys against non-action movie enemies. You'll be like, what happened? The game's over.
So I have a question.
Sure.
In this current iteration of the book, I was looking at the weapon burns, and I saw there's a lot less weapon burns than there was in the previous version of the book. Now, is that because this one is a work in progress still, or are they being cut, or?
So yeah, that's actually something we talked about in the, yeah, I don't think you had arrived yet and I forgot. So there was a section in the book that dealt with other weapons, and it was this customizable weapon section. Those mechanics were the weakest in the playtest and needed a little bit of dialing in. And the problem with them was that they were a subset of rules within a subset of rules. So you got all these. Okay, I learned boons. I learned my chapter renown. I learned copper attunement. I learned all this. And then at the end of the boons, there was like this build a weapon feature. And while some people loved it, we got several questions about it. And they were like, well, hold on, how does this work? And the description wasn't that great. So you will see those mechanics in another book. We're probably going to put it in Dead Man's Guide and put a breakout box saying, you know, you could reskin these as copper boons and do it this way. But it seemed a little tacked on, if that makes sense. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I see what you're saying. It was more complex. It took me a few read-throughs to understand it. If you do want to put another book, then that's fine, because there's a lot of other boons I can easily just choose from. So are we going to go with that then, that basically those are no longer copper boons? I should choose something else, or?
So which one were you looking for? Like the customizable weapons? Because what we're talking about, if you're watching, it was like you could choose a weapon and then it had the ability to call it to you, and then the ability to trip, and then so like you could pick these customizable features. Was there a particular weapon you were looking for?
There was one that was called Copper Arcanic. I don't remember what it does anymore because I don't have the old book open.
No, you're fine.
Not Copper. Yeah. It was just like, it was arcanic for the weapon, essentially. I completely forgot what it, no, I think it was the one where you channel the spell through the weapon, and then you swing the weapon and the spell goes off.
So here,
that's what it is.
Yeah.
That is one of the ones we cut for the very reason that people were complaining that it was overpowered.
Yeah. Because
you could cast Fireball, like Drake was saying, you could cast Fireball on a sword and then hit with a sword and do, let's say you just did like a D6 damage and then you crit it or whatever, and then you also do a Fireball. And it was like, there were a couple instances where it wiped out bosses.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was like, I'm putting this powerful spell inside a sword and then I'm using the full weapon's damage. And then there are other boons that you couldn't necessarily pair with this boon, but some of them, the way the wording was, like you could sort of stack some things, and people were doing just like, especially, and I don't remember because I don't want to say the wrong thing, but it was like some of the class abilities, like a Barbarian's Rage and things were just augmenting this boon so much that it was like, okay, it just needs a little more play testing to kind of find the limitations and the cracks in the grout. It was just a little game breaking in some ways.
All right, that's fine. I can just
how the other people were doing it. I know that for a spell like you said, Fireball, when it was targeting that creature, it like as part of the sword swing, it was literally just that creature. So while it would be awesome against a boss, it's not so good. It's not as good as actually casting Fireball when you have a horde of minions, is how I did it before.
Sure, and that's exactly where, you know, kind of dialing it in and putting it in another book where we could put that kind of language and say, you know, for the use of this boon, the spell acts as only one target. People were getting pretty creative with it too, and it's cool. Like I said, it just needs to be dialed in because people were using things like Charm Person and stuff like that, where you could do a ton of damage and then the person couldn't hit you back because you charmed them. Like it was interesting. It was just a little bit on the unbalanced side, and we thought, you know, it's not making the product stronger. Like you said, you have to read it a few times to understand it, and it wasn't worth, like, the squeeze wasn't worth the juice, if that makes sense. So yeah. He's like, let's see here. Oh yeah, and any one of you can use Be a Better Weapon Master for your magic item. In fact, I highly suggest it. It's on absolutetabletop.com. It's got scads of tables for axes, bows, you know, all kinds of weapons, and you roll a description, a property, and a trait, and sort of combine those things. And then in addition to those tables, we have generated like pre-made ones for you. Any other questions about the boons or anything like that?
On imminence eradication, if you want to pull that one up. I'm not going to do the memorization because that's not what I thought it was, because I need to read the bottom two sentences apparently.
I need to read the whole thing before I ask you questions.
Well, I got so excited about it that I didn't read it.
Fireball cantrip.
Yeah, I'll do that. That would have been amazing. But I mean, I took copper phasing because that's just kind of cool to be able to like kind of become this like ethereal thing and walk through walls and
Sure.
things like that. That's awesome. But the imminence eradication, it says max damage. So yeah, when you successfully complete a ranged attack, you may deal maximum damage. You can use once per short or long rest. So we're not talking about crit. We're just talking about like if it's 8d6, we're talking 48.
That's correct. So just like the standard 5e rules, though, your spell can crit. So you can do max damage and then use the standard critical hit rules to multiply that damage.
Gotcha.
Meaning what you essentially do is if it's a ranged spell that you would roll for, instead of saying, okay, this does 1d8, you have a chance of that rolling a 1. You take 8. It does 8. If it's a d12, it does 12. Basically, in the spell's description, you get to do the maximum damage. So what you're guaranteeing is if the spell hits, it's hitting for a wallop. Does that make sense? Drake?
I give you a thumbs up, man. Yeah, no.
Oh, sorry. I'm looking. I have the screen shared. Sorry, I have the screen shared.
I just wanted to make sure that I understood the mechanic and I actually read to the bottom of that one. So
no, for sure. So, and it gives you an idea. So there are all kinds of boons that do all kinds of things. It's not just combat where it's like, I do more damage. There are plenty of those, but there are ones for spells. There are ones for support, ones where you can like create a wall so that you're, the people with you are protected. Like he was saying, some of the stuff where you can basically phase a group through a wall, like make the group immaterial and move through one wall so that you can get out of dangerous areas. So there's a lot of utilitarian stuff and buffs and support stuff. So super rad. So any kind of final questions here from the chat or anywhere else?
One more thing. The boon Copper Conditions is the one you can make like the weather or the play with the vision, yada, yada, yada. It doesn't have a time limit attached to it for how long the effect persists for. So I was unsure if does it just last until I say, okay, no more raining, or is it just like a minute?
So, to me, because I think it would be kind of a concentration based thing where it lasts until you're trying to do something else. And it doesn't say that because I think you can flavor it kind of however you want. You get to impose difficult terrain, like you said, because that's not a game-breaking thing. It's cool. It's very helpful, but to me, it can last for a while, and I wanted the ability for it to last for a while because you can do it a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus per short or long rest. So you can do it like 6 times. So it'd be cool if you need rain. Okay, stop. You need snow or, that kind of stuff. So it's really until you stop it. And I like to think that every game master can kind of flavor that differently. But I also like to think that if you leave the area, it would kind of stop after a while too. Like it would be cool if, other enemies come to reinforce and it's still snowing in a room. It's just like barely snowing. That would be cool, So yeah, I would just say it would be up to us and kind of flavor it, but there's no hard mechanics.
All right, sounds good.
No, good question though.
So I just rolled up my staff. If we wanted to kind of discuss that and give a highlight of what be a better weapon master looks like. So I use the staff section. I haven't named it yet, but basically it gives me the ability to draw streaks of light in the sky with this staff, and they remain for 1d10 minutes. And I thought that was really cool because I imagine like Merrick going over the battle plan, and he's just kind of like drawing in the sky his little like battle plan, like, oh, you're going to shoot over here and you're going to do this, that, and the other thing. And then it stays up there for just a few minutes, and then they wait and make sure it disperses before they go. That way it's not written down or anything like that. And then the staff itself is a dark wooden staff with a shape of a fist at the top clutching a dagger. And I thought that was really cool because it makes it kind of almost like a scythe looking kind of thing. And I've got this great idea of like Merrick, the way he's going to down an enemy is just like impaling somebody with that thing.
Awesome. What I'll do is I'm actually going to I'm going to screen share because I have our books. I have them because I helped to write them, so I own them. So let's look here. go. So what you're looking at is be a better weapon master. Now, right now, I'm kind of in the middle of it here. So, and there's a breakout box from us, from Matt Click from A Fistful of Dice. So we got rapiers. Chris, what page are the staffs on? Do you know?
Let me look. Let's see. I'm on the names section, which is 32. So
Cool.
30.
Perfect. So, whoa, buddy.
Though my page numbers might be wrong because I think I still have a review copy.
Oh, no, here it is, quarterstaffs.
Okay.
So if you look here, and I'll zoom in a little more, you start out with your weapon qualities. And so as you do this, you roll a d10, and you can see there's really cool stuff. Chris got 3. You draw the streaks of light across the sky. There are other things like atop this stave is a small glass bulb that lights up with a warm glow when it's dark. Just cool, flavorful stuff. From there, the next thing you have are physical features. So this gives you the description. So this quarterstaff is not only a powerful cudgel, but a long wind instrument with various holes and a mouthpiece. So like just this cool, flavorful stuff of like, hey, this looks like a really long flute. And then the final thing are the names. So, you know, tormented finger, tranquil stave, corrupted spire, etc., etc., etc. And I love this. Down at the bottom, there are just these little tips. Powerful weapons are often cursed. Don't forget that giving the players a choice between power and consequence can create powerful moments in that character story arc. So let's do this. Chris, I want you to roll a, I guess 2d10. And basically anything, it's like where it's like a D50. So the first 50 and then the second 50, basically choose a page that corresponds to that number, if that makes sense.
No.
All right, so
You lost me after choose a page.
Okay, so the idea would be it. Oh, okay. I guess this would be really confusing unless you had a D100. The idea is that I want you to roll a page, so between 1 and 43, because I want you to choose a tooltip at the bottom.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I probably was just really confusing the way I tried to describe it.
Let's see here. 31. So conveniently in the same area.
Oh, perfect. And then let's see if we can apply that to, because I'm still screen sharing.
31 is a plot hook, it looks like.
All right, so your players have found a roving band of Drogish dwarves who claim they know where a powerful relic of the ancient Titans is buried in an ocean of blood underground. So
that actually really works with the idea of what I had for Merrick. I wanted him to be a survivor from Ennis, that he escaped by going to the sphere below. And maybe during his journey and becoming a Copper Jackal, he found the staff there.
That's awesome. I love it. And so, yeah, that's perfect. So in fact, if you guys want to do that, if you guys want to roll up weapons and then use the plot hook at the bottom to have sort of this backstory that kind of brings into the adventure, I think that would be super sick. Just little stuff. And we're going to have a great time. I think this adventure is going to be, I say adventure, this one shot, this Copper Jackals one shot is going to just be about the kinship, the bond of brotherhood, these jackals who are united under a common cause and who are called in when covert ops would be really nice, but it's probably not going to end like that.
Hey, Tim, where's that? I found the other part. Where's that plot hook thing you were talking about? What page is that on?
His was on page 31. So essentially what I was saying is there's 43 pages in the book, and every page has this little sort of pro tip at the bottom.
Right.
So I was just saying essentially roll whatever combination of dice you need to get to that page, to find a random page number, and then try to work that in.
Gotcha. Okay, I just rolled one, but I'll put that in our chat later.
Sure, that's fine. Or I have it pulled up if you want to make that the last thing we do.
Yeah, I rolled. The first thing was it was a revitalizing. Well, let me see where I'm at. Excuse me.
Which page is it?
31 or no 30. Sorry, man, I'm pulling it up. It's just the first thing for the quarterstaffs.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
page
man.
30.
My thing's going back and forth too here.
Oh, you're good.
Apologize.
Oh, page 30.
Yeah.
Page
here
30.
we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first one I rolled was a 9. The staff is revitalizing. Will replace a small bit of health for you daily if needed. And on physical features, I rolled a 1, I believe, which was, the quarterstaff is made of pure white marble.
Oh, 1. Gotcha. So awesome. So now,
I've got kind of an idea for that.
sure.
So the Sarek has to eat a level 1 spell per day. What if the Sarek, the staff regrows itself, but he just gnaws on it, and that's where he's getting his rejuvenation, is to avoid that fatigue level?
That would be cool.
That actually is pretty cool. So the other thing you were talking about, the plot hook. What did you roll to get that, Chris?
I ended up rolling a 31, but basically inside the section for each weapon, it's got at least one plot hook. So there's a plot hook with the swords, there's one with the stabs, etc.
So I rolled a 26.
Cool. So that would be essentially page 26, and then you can
Look for a plot hook.
Look at what it is. So, and this particular one's a tip. So you can go with this or the plot hook nearby, so I'll screen share again. So this one for page 26 it says, a great way to make the players feel like their weapon is powerful and unique is to have an NPC recognize it, calling it by name. So that, if you want to go with that, I can make that happen in the game, where your staff is a known named staff. And essentially, I don't want to spoil it, but imagine if you have this known weapon of oh, wow, that's such and such. And then later on they see you going,
yeah, dude. No, we can make that work. I like Chris's idea, just gnawing on it on a white marble staff.
It's cool.
Tim, I rolled up a sword. All right, this is what I got. This one's kind of a good one, but we're gonna talk about the mechanics on it. So the feature, the weapon quality, I got a 10. So the blade is torches star steel, and when exposed to starlight, glows white and deals additional force damage.
Nice.
So I'm not sure what kind of additional force damage you want to slap onto that.
What's your proficiency bonus at this level?
5.
All right, so let's do half that rounded down. So it would do an extra 2 force damage.
All right, that sounds good.
I like that. And then give me a page number to have some kind of funky plot hook for you.
All right, so I just roll a D43 over here. Is that what I'm looking for?
Essentially, that's the thing. I guess everyone was kind of doing it their own way. And then I was trying to come up with some cockamamie mathematical way to do it. Which
I'm just going to roll a D20 twice and see what happens.
Under 43.
All right, so we're going to be on page 21, it looks like. So let me go to there. So.
Oh, yeah, if you read it's what you get there.
I don't know if you guys have done this, but with that book, you can just take one of these weapons and make an entire one shot or even a campaign around the one thing that you create with these rolls. It's just so much inspiration here.
So on page 21, it's sample names for bows. So what I'm thinking about doing with the sword was actually the star steel that was used for the sword was the same star steel that was used for the bow, and the bow was essentially melted down. It could have belonged to another Copper Jackal, it was lost in a fight.
Oh, I love that.
She took that and reforged it.
Dude, I love that. That's perfect. Great. And so that's how you use this book. It's Be a Better Weapon Master, and it's on our website, absolutetabletop.com right now. You can get thousands of miles out of this book, like they're saying. It's sort of an endless trove so that your weapons don't have to be boring. When you give something cool to the players, it feels cool and unique versus just the, hey, here's a +1 longsword of boring, that kind of thing. Awesome. Well, guys, I'm really feeling good. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, while you guys were doing all that, I rolled mine up real quick.
Oh, cool. My man.
I chose to go with the spear. Monks are limited to simple weapons. And I rolled up for a quality. This spear splits in the middle at the wielder's behest, becoming 2 javelins.
Nice.
And then For physical features, it was, which one, where'd it go? Number 7. The blade of this spear is a flat, sharpened bird of prey. Its wings spread viciously. Its beak open in a scream. Every part of it is sharp. And I imagine that it's when it separates, that it just looks like two versions of that. Like it splits at that flat spearhead and kind of spreads out like that. And it is called, where did it go? The Ruptured Heart.
So cool. The book is so good. You need to get me a better weapon. It's just insta-rad.
And I got to find it. I lost the page. Oh, the page number I came up on was 37 for the little tooltip at the bottom here. And given that it has the feature of splitting into two, I thought this was appropriate. The twin blades of Argyris. Argyris was an ancient hero essential in protecting the tribal elves of the realm from certain extinction. In combat, he not only used his arcane short swords, in this case spear, to fell his enemies, but these magical blades kept him light-footed enough to climb and free-run along walls with ease.
Jake, that is perfect for you, dude.
It's like, yeah, it like perfectly fits. We can go over. I'll throw some stuff at you mechanically, and see what you think about it. That makes sense. We can figure that out before the game. But thanks, Chris, for coming up with for bringing up the be a better weapon master instead of traditional magic items. I love this.
It's super rad. It's fun to just roll up magic items. I mean, it's
I
a
really
blast.
like it
That
for
book's
Copper
really cool.
Jackals too, because it's not a +1 sword, and
Right.
with Copper Jackals.
Guys, sorry, real quick. I need to jet. My little kid just woke up. She's sick. So.
Oh, geez. Well, hey, man, have a great night.
Yeah, guys.
Thanks for everything, and check out RPG Construct. That's his channel.
All right, guys. Take care.
So, yeah, guys, I think we'll call it here. Thank you. I'll let everybody go ahead and do any outros, but I'll go ahead and just thank all the viewers. This was a blast. Hopefully you learned something about the Copper Jackals. Hopefully you'll join us for our Brigade Con game. I'll throw it first to the magnificent Marquise.
So, according to Tim, I am the Magnificent Marquise. It's been a pleasure being here. I run the channel Typical Strider. Basically, I put nothing but live plays on there. On Brigade Con this year, I'll be running a game at 12 p.m. Eastern Time called Soot, Charcoal, and Ill Omens, a Kondwanya Fable. Kind of a story in my own Bronze Age setting. Heavy Mongolian and Native American themes in it, so if you want to check that out, go ahead and watch that on Brigade Con Day. Other than that, I'm very excited to be able to play this game, and I'm looking forward to playing Flair.
Jake.
And I am going to plug my Brigade Con stuff. Starting right at midnight for 4 hours, I am that map I showed earlier of the ruined temple. I am going to build this as an actual 3D terrain piece, complete from scratch, bare plain foam core to a fully painted piece in 4 hours. And I'm going to do that as a live video. I'm going to have chat going, so I'll be periodically taking questions. I'm going to be working at a rapid pace, but I'm going to build this ruined jungle temple. And I'm going to explain what I'm doing along the way. So it'll be kind of like a live follow-along tutorial. I've even put on the live event in the chat is a list of materials you will need available in America anyway. I know foam could be difficult overseas, at your local dollar store and things like that. So if you wanted to, you could try to follow along with me. And then later in the day, I'm going to be doing a content creators panel for 2 hours from 2 to 4. I'm running the Affairs of Dragons, a D&D 5e game where all of the players, 5 of them, are playing as chromatic or metallic dragons. So you know they're going to be going up against something big. And then I'm doing something else after that. Oh, yeah, I'm playing in this game. And I'm Mini Terrain Domain, terrain, all that good stuff. Ta-da!
All right, Chris.
All right, I'm Chris with Drop Dice. The big thing that I kind of want to plug right now is I started a podcast, which I'm referring to as a lorecast. Essentially, it's my homebrew world, and I'm discussing some of the lore items of the world itself, Stratmere. The last one was discussing about where liches come from in the world and how that's kind of shaped things in that world. I would like for anybody who does listen to it to give me some feedback. Facebook, the website, it's actually available on dropdice.com. And that's where it's going to be for the first 4 episodes while I kind of trial it and see if I have an audience or at least a good format or whatever the case may be. So I do appreciate any sort of feedback for anybody that takes a listen.
Hey Tim, I want to grab Drake's spot real quick.
Sure.
Since he had to duck out. Drake, the RPG Construct, check it out, his channel. I'm one of the players in a Dragongrin campaign that Drake is DMing in a pretty open world setting in Dragongrin. We started at level 1 on a pirate ship. We're literally stuck in the middle of the ocean in a dinghy, not knowing what's going to happen next. In our next session, which I believe is around November 4th or something like that. You can check the RPG Construct channel, the AbTab group. But that's all in this wonderful world of Dragongrin. So I wanted to plug that real quick too.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's a great game, and it's crazy for James and I and the rest of the guys at AbTab because seeing other players play so passionately in something that you created is crazy. And that's the same thing, Marquise has done Dragongrin one-shots. Chris has done incredible. I mean, you guys all have these really good, flavorful. Jake, you have also done stuff in Dragongrin, and it's really cool to see you guys like the lore enough to do that. So it's an honor to have great players and game masters run your stuff, and that's awesome to me. So I'm Tim. I'm half of Tabletop Terrors, and I'm really looking forward to BrigadeCon. If you haven't signed up, you need to go to brigadecon.org and still do that. They're looking for players even now. So grab your spot. It's free, and the games, any proceeds from charity or anything, or any proceeds that come, go to charity, and the charity is Child's Play. So it's going to be huge. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out with us. I know it's late. This was a fun 2 hours for me, and I think I have a good idea about the game. Check out all these guys' channels, and just keep being awesome. So until next time, may your dice roll high.